All right, we are now live on Facebook and recording. So just so those who are with us in the room here know, if you do not wish to be seen, you can leave your camera off. We will start our session now and give a brief introduction to Ramon, who is with us from Sharm El-Sheikh, and then he will give us a brief, as long as he would like to speak, description of his experiences and the activities of the Grassroots Global Justice Alliance at COP27. And then we will open up the floor to questions and answers. For those who are in the room, you can raise your hand or write in the chat box. And for those who are joining us online, you can write into the comment box, and we will also be monitoring that and asking questions there. So thank you to everyone who is with us for the session today. And with no further ado, I will turn the word over to Ramon, who will give us his information on COP27 and the activities that they're doing there.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Can y'all hear me? Yes, my name is Ramon Mejia. I'm the Anti-Militarism National Organizer with Grassroots Global Justice Alliance. Grassroots Global Justice Alliance came to the COP as part of the It Takes Roots frontline delegation, an alliance of alliances that consisted of GGJ, and Indigenous Environmental Network, Climate Justice Alliance, Just Transition Alliance, Movement for Black Lives, La Via Campesina, I've been here for 2 weeks, essentially from the beginning of the COP until now, trying to lift up, the three main goals of our delegation was to lift up the demands of climate reparations, to defend human and indigenous rights, and to say that, we don't support, false solutions. So that's what our delegation has been doing here. About 60 grassroots leaders from around the United States, including Guam, Puerto Rico, many of our La Via Campesina comrades from Tunisia, from the continent of Africa, from Palestine. We came here to lift up those main demands. And then as part of GGJ, under the demand of protecting indigenous and human rights, we lifted up this intersection around militarism and the extractive economy, and the fact that military missions aren't included in these international climate conversations, but to go also beyond this impact of military missions and how the military impacts people, land, water, air. The military, as y'all know, is one of the most destructive institutions on the planet, destroying human and ecological systems in order to achieve his mission. It's been different. Definitely, needless to say, here at this COP in Sharm El-Sheikh. This is my second COP. Last year, I attended the COP in Glasgow, where we first lifted up this intersection of militarism and climate change, and the fact that military missions were excluded. I think that in Glasgow, because of civil society's engagement, because of this intersection that we were lifting up, we saw a very kind of fiery support. Civil society was really supporting this message because they understood that militarism is something that's impacting our climate, and that to exclude the military impact on the climate and land was to show that they weren't being serious about confronting climate change. I think that the activities that we did in Glasgow lifted that up, and our members really saw this intersection really important and wanted to bring that back to COP27 here at Sharm El-Sheikh, and we continue to do that. We had an action last Friday where we brought grassroots leaders, and we did it inside the Blue Zone to lift up this intersection. We had speakers from Alaska, from Puerto Rico, from the Nigeria, from Palestine, and it was interesting because it also, and I'm sorry if I'm kind of a little bit over the place, but in Glasgow, when we did an action inside the Blue Zone, we had this banner that said U.S. militarism is #1 polluter, killer, colonizer. And we were reprimanded in Glasgow because this banner said U.S. militarism, and you can't name and shame countries within the blue zone, so they made us fold the U.S. part down, and they told us, they ended up confiscating our banner and then returned it after the fact, right? This action that we did, we used that same banner. We covered up the U.S. part just to be in line with the guidelines that they were doing, but we also had a banner that said decolonization, demilitarization, and decriminalization. Some of our members that we brought here to this COP were systems impacted people, formerly incarcerated folks who wanted to make this connection around the U.S. prison industrial complex and also the growing Egyptian prison industrial complex. We know that the U.S. is, essentially has provided a blueprint for how to imprison a population. Over 1 million people have been imprisoned in the United States, and you have a growing over 90,000 people of conscience that are being held in prison here in Egypt, right? And that during that action, one of our members from the Arab Research and Organizing Center out of the Bay Area, who's Palestinian, raised up this, saying that he was Palestinian, that he was from Gaza, that that the Israeli occupation was bombing his people and his country, and we were reprimanded again because he said that he was from Palestine, and they said that it was an opportunity for them to debadge us, and that if party members complained about our action, that we were going to be debadged, or that could be one of the possibilities that we could be debadged and kicked out of the COP. There were indigenous activists that were here at the COP who, during President Biden's speech, raised a banner and yelled a war cry about the impact of indigenous of U.S. policy and changes impacting indigenous people, and those indigenous youth were debadged and kicked out of the COP. We saw that we definitely noticed that we had a spotlight because of this intersection that we're lifting up. We were very outspoken about the military impacts. We were very much outspoken about the fact that Ale Al-Fatah was on a hunger strike here. And that's one thing that took center stage at this COP was around human rights. And that was something that we continue to lift up in every action that we participated in as part of the It Takes Roots frontline delegation. And then today, we also had a side event inside the Blue Zone where we brought speakers from the Via Campesina out of, as well as Drum, Desi's Rising Up and Moving, Pueblo Action Alliance, and from the World March of Women. And we had a good turnout, a good support. People are receptive to the to this theme and what we're bringing to the table. But this COP just showed us once again that this theme and this critique, this pointed critique that we have of the military's impact on the climate is not on the table. It hasn't been discussed. There's been a few smaller events where military missions are being discussed in a sense of like what's happening during a specific, during war, but not the overarching kind of impact that the military and missions has just by, engaging in war or even in war preparation. It took we definitely saw while participants within the Blue Zone were receptive of the message. We tried to meet with U.S. delegates, the U.S. climate envoy. They wouldn't meet with us. We tried to do outreach to try and set meetings up, and that just didn't happen. As a matter of fact, I saw Nancy Pelosi was walking with the gaggle, right, with the whole delegation, and I tried to approach her, and the Secret Service blocked me, like no, you can't, she's moving, you can't talk to her. And also one thing that the It Takes Roots had was we had an exhibit space within one of the delegation pavilions where we had pamphlets like these that talk about what we're trying to do, and people, dozens. We had 10, we're talking to 10, 15, 20 people an hour that were really receptive to the message that we were bringing. So it showed, I think more than anything, that people can make the connections, they understand this topic, and they're very supportive. It's just that, you know, when it comes to U.S., you know, that either government officials or to the state party members, that they just weren't, they're not ready, or they just weren't willing to have the conversation. I see Nick on the call, and the new report from the Transnational Institute, we're pushing that out there, and people were really they saw that the disparity in the sense of military spending and versus the climate spending, and people were like amazed. They were astonished, but then also kind of like, what do we do? What's next? Like, how can we get involved? So that really brings, what do you call it? If there was any light in this kind of darkness that surrounded us in this trade show, as they call it, this plastic COP, you know, is this kind of intersection, right? One of the speakers at our actions, Nemo Bassi, I had the opportunity to meet him for the first time, and he was just really appreciative of this message that we're bringing. You know, there's something that he and others have been bringing for a very long time about the impact the military has, and the collaboration they do with the extractive industry. And he was just really amazed that we were bringing this no war, no warming message. And he was really supportive. And I don't know, I can definitely open it up to hear what folks want to hear. I think I wish we would have got more news coverage. I wish we would have got more kind of more ability to be able to push the message out past the people that we're meeting. But I think all in all, the numbers of conversations that we had with not only just people that were participating in the COP that had nothing to do with activists or organizing backgrounds, that were here either for college doing research, that were part of other delegations, that they stopped at our exhibit multiple times and had conversations not only with myself, but other members of the delegation, and from other organizations. And I just think that we have to just continue, peeling away at it. We have to continue to push it out there. We're already thinking about how we're going to continue this message in next year in the UAE, because with the 7th Fleet being there, it's important that we continue this strategy about the impact in the militarism and the climate. I think that they're even talking about the year after that being in Australia. So we know that U.S. government, U.S. military, Australian military, they collaborate waging war as well. So it's, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, and I'm looking forward to the conversations that we have. The conversations that we have with folks after this, right? Because the conversations don't end here at the COP. They continue moving forward. I know that back in the States now that there's the organizing of how we're going to dismantle the military-industrial complex that's happening there. And then as far as within GGJ, we're going to continue to try and push this divest from harm and invest in care, making the connections around militarism and the extractive economy, and investing in a feminist regenerative one, right? So I'll leave it there in case folks have any questions.
Thank you so much, Ramon. That was really great.
Yeah, I think I had more time over the next.
Sorry, I think there's
a delay there. I'm sorry.
On my end there. Okay, so thank you so much, Ramon, and I think we are now opening up to questions and answers from those who are joining us either here in the call or those online. Feel free to raise your hands. I see we already have a hand up from Nick, so I'll let you go ahead, Nick.
Hey, Ramon, it's really great to hear from you in COP and all the great work you're doing. I guess I'd love to hear a bit more. You mentioned some of the delegation from Guam and Alaska, and what you've been hearing from them about kind of being on the front lines of militarism, especially like Alaska becoming the new potential war zone as everyone competes over resources as the ice melts. So I'd love to hear a bit more, and also just whether I know the situation is really difficult for any Egyptian activist even to be present or to be visible, but I was just wondering if there'd been any exchanges in any way with Egyptians who are, of course, on the front lines of militarism, being under a military regime, which has been supported by the US for several decades, and whether there's been any kind of exchanges and conversations between people, between movements at the different ends of militarism.
All right, it looks like Ramon is back. Oh, wonderful. Okay.
Oh, I'm so sorry, it froze. Can you hear me?
No problem. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
yeah, I'm inside the cup now, so I can like look at this world. Okay. Sorry, Nick, it cut off a little bit. I just caught the Alaska piece.
Yes, it was about the people facing militarism, also whether there have been exchanges with places with kind of Egyptians around this who are also on the front of militarism. But also conscious that, of course, that situation is very difficult and people have to be very careful.
Yeah, so the green space is, so one aspect was that the green space was available for us to be able to engage with like Egyptian civil society, but we made the assessment as a delegation that that we had to, as individuals, be able to provide our information in order to be able to engage in that space. And then just from the assessment that we made, we did have a couple folks that went out there that it was essentially more of a honeypot for a honeypot to be able to bring Egyptian civil society in order to be able to kind of identify who was engaging with international activists. The ones that we did see, the ones that members of our delegation saw were primarily state-controlled or NGOs that were doing a lot of depoliticized recycling, trash pickup, very, very simple, very non-political environmental work. So that was one space that we didn't engage as much, and that's one thing that was very much different from Glasgow to here, is that there was very much an opportunity to engage civil society in Glasgow, even though in Glasgow there was dozens and dozens of police from around the island, from around the UK to go to Scotland. Here it was, I mean, I couldn't tell you how many police there were, how many like in suits. There was like Egyptian police in suits like every 100 yards when you're outside in the city, outside of our hotels, as you're walking around the city centers. They're everywhere. And for quite some time, we actually thought that we were, we definitely suspected that we were like under surveillance. Definitely, I think we were all under surveillance, but that there was very much eyes were being kept on us as we were moving about throughout the city and trying to identify and trying to build with folks in that way. And then just to kind of bring up the way that some of our like comrades from some of the frontline organizers that came with us as part of the delegation from Egypt saw that, I'm not from Egypt, from Alaska, was around like geoengineering and a lot of the ways that the experimentation that's been happening on the Pacific Islands around like thermonuclear tests, seeing the way that the Arctic tundra, where they injected people with radioactive iodine and spread radiation into the tundra, and seeing how the bodies of indigenous peoples had been impacted. So, through projects like the Arctic Ice Project, which has been carried out through naval bases. So those were some of the issues that were definitely being raised here around geoengineering, and some of the indigenous comrades that came from Alaska and some from Canada as well.
Thank you so much, Ramon. We have an online question that was asked, one of the viewers for the live stream. Hopefully you can provide some insights into this. I know it wasn't quite the focus of your activities here, but the question is, What actions are happening to stop escalation of the war in Ukraine? So there's that question. I don't know if you want to answer that now, or we have two other hands that are raised. We can open up to a couple questions and then you can answer maybe what you can about each one.
Okay.
All right. So the next hand we have Dr. Al Ramasamy from India, who is with us. Please.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, all of our participants. We do one thing. All of human beings daily 5 minutes Om chanting. That means meditation. Every day, morning and evening, only 5 minutes, that is 21 times. Every human being's individual chanting Om chanting regularly, that is one of the meditation for individual persons, automatically created the positive vibe to individual person. That is the developed to the human beings and countries and whole the world. That is one of the way for stopping the war in the world. I think that is the Ukraine war is very uh, unfortunately. So very simple ideas. That is our India is a spiritual country. We do that one thing. These things are we teach to all the people. So definitely we stop the world war. So we are only brothers and sisters. We are so happy every life, every day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Al Ramasamy. We have one more question then from Gabrielle Prohaska, who's with us. Please go ahead.
Raymond, you mentioned a new report comparing military spending to climate spending. Which report is that? And could you tell a bit more about that report, please?
Sorry, I was trying to find the mute button. Yeah, because you know, the role that I've been here is primarily as a staff person to support the delegates and the delegation that we came with. We weren't as readily as able to engage around the conversation around Ukraine. Although we did see that in the Ukraine pavilion that there was essentially you know, fundraising for drones. It was something that was interesting to see. And then, you know, it being there one day and then not being there the next was something that was an issue to be raised. I'm sorry, there's people that are really talking a little bit. Let me try and move to a different space. Yes. So that was one thing that we saw, and there was definitely like a hind aspect around where the recent missiles had fallen, uncertain of whether it was Russian or not in Poland. So there was conversation that was happening here as far as like how can we be able to push, you know, the conversation around Ukraine, around Russia within the COP, but it was something that that didn't really wasn't really brought up. And I know that there was a side event around Ukraine, but I wasn't able to attend it, unfortunately. And then what was the other question? I apologize. I don't remember the other one.
So Dr. Ramasamy had just mentioned the power of prayer or the power of Om, and then Gabrielle Prohaska was asking about the climate spending and military spending reports. Now, I posted the link to that in the chats, but maybe you can also talk a little bit about it and how you use the report in the context there. Yeah, no, I think that the way that the report, yes, I think it was something that came out. I was able to read. I haven't really gotten a chance to really dig deep into the report, but it came at a perfect time as far as it being the COP, because I think that this is a connection that people still are trying to, or fail to make, in the sense that that the impact that the military has outside of war
on the climate crisis is essentially a mute point, is not being discussed. And I think that the work that the National Institute and the work of Nick that they're doing as far as putting out those reports, it continues to move the conversation forward and forward. I remember last year, the report that was put around like climate security was something that was also useful during the COP last year. So I just get, big ups to Nick and to the entire crew that continues to put out reports and the resources necessary for from activists like myself. This research is useful in order to be able to make the connections for our people at the community level, to be able to continue to use the facts on the ground to show them that these are important connections that are being made. So yeah, I recommend everybody to read it. I recommend everybody to check out the climate security reports. Everything that comes out that Nick is writing it's amazing, and it's just great to have him doing the research and the whole team out there.
Great, thank you again, Ramon, so much. Do we have any other questions? If there are other questions, if you can raise your hand or write into the chat. For those of us watching or for those who are watching online, you can write your question in the comment box, and we are also monitoring there. All right. Yep, I think that seems to be all the questions that we have here for this session today. So thank you so much, Ramon, for your time and your expertise and all of the work that you're doing in COP for the climate, for the people, and for demilitarization and peace. We really appreciate it. And I think one message we can take out of this session is to already begin planning for COP28 next year, and hopefully come in with a stronger coalition and plenty of events leading up to it to really pressure the world to shift our priorities and focus on a security for the people. Thank you
so much for organizing this report back, and for everybody that was able to join. We'll definitely, as our delegation starts to head out over the next few days, once we get back on Turtle Island, back inside the States, we'll be putting together a more thorough report back from our time here at COP that we'll definitely share with IPB and everybody to make sure that y'all, we have a more thorough kind of analysis of our time here in Sharm El-Sheikh.
All right, best of luck and safe travels. We'll be in touch, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. We hope you have a wonderful evening, day, morning, whatever time it is where you are. Bye.
Bye.